Not in Amite just yet, but for the Independence area around Amite, you need to take those precautions pretty soon because it is moving in your direction. And again, thankfully, we are getting a pretty decent heads up from this storm, so it is not on top of you right now. But for the folks continuing into the Florida parishes that are watching us, these storms are impacting you. Again, right now around the Denham Springs area, we'll be moving up toward Montpelier, and then once it crosses into Tangi, it will affect more of the Independence area and Amite very shortly. These again have been moving at about 55 miles an hour. What I can do is go and look exactly what the forward speed of the storm is, and then we can track it. Actually, this one is moving at about 60 miles an hour. So if I track this out and look at its forecast in moving at 60 miles an hour, this one at Denham, and kind of take it toward Amite, you're looking at it moving toward, say, again, if it makes a little bit of a jog more to the south or more of a northeasterly track, these are the positions of that tornado in the next hour or so, or actually next half hour or so, because it's moving so quickly. Around Amite, it may be about 9:36. So you've still got about 30 minutes or so before that storm is over you. Same for Independence, but all of the communities just before it does get to Amite, we'll see it in about the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. And then after that, again, moving into more the Tangi area around Independence at 9:34, maybe about 2 minutes later around Amite. So this is where we are watching very closely for our viewers. Again, we do have viewers in the Florida parishes as well. Baton Rouge has been kind of monitoring these storms, but as they are now moving away from the Baton Rouge market, we're going to start to focus in on these storms over the course of the next several hours. Again, the line itself has been moving very, very quickly, and thankfully, so far, we have not had any real reports of any significant damage post the line pushing on through. We had one report in Point Coupé Parish, I believe, of some tree damage, but that has been about it, and it looked like it was probably more of just the gusty winds associated with the line itself as opposed to any kind of tornadic development in that area. And so, again, this has been a fairly, relatively speaking, tranquil line. Again, you're going to get some very strong gusty winds, very heavy downpours, bit of lightning as well. But for all intents and purposes, this is not the line that we had thought could move through southeast Louisiana. Now, with that said, it's not done yet. Again, it is just beginning to move into our viewing area, and it still has another couple of hours to go before it clears us. Probably after about midnight to 1 a.m., the timing of this line does look like it'll be clear of the region. So this is not going to be an all-night event. Thankfully, this is not going to continue on through the night. And as we head into the overnight hours, I think for the most part, going after midnight, 1 o'clock, things will really be settling down, and the rest of the week will be very, very quiet. So the storm that we're watching right now is the one that is currently around the Denham Springs area. So it's right here that we're looking at the rotation. That's what the velocities show us, the rotation within the storm. And if it continues along this path, Montpelier, Amite may stay just to the north of Independence, but indeed, if there is a tornado on the ground, it would be around Amite, probably around the 9:30 time frame. So I'm kind of giving it maybe a few more minutes where the model said it would be. Radar estimating about 9:36, so let's be on the safe side and say about 9:30. So for the folks in Amite, you still have some time to get into that tornado safe space, but that's where you'd want to go, that tornado safe space where it's the centrally located room on the bottommost floor of your home. Stay away from windows. That may be a hallway, a closet, a bathroom, somewhere like that is where you'd want to go. We just got a new image. Every time you see the radar image kind of shift, that's a new frame that is coming into the radar, and then the computer inputs it or outputs it. And so that is a new image. So it's still holding up. When we watch these scans, we want to see if this, what we call couplet, continues to show up every several scans of the radar. If it starts to become what looks to be more broad, or you're not seeing the reds and the greens right next to each other, it may be a weakening storm. And so we kind of are able to breathe that little bit of a sigh of relief. But after a couple of scans, if that is still showing up, then there is still that very much danger with the storm as it's moving in whatever direction. This one happens to be up toward the northeast. So looking at the storm over the last, say, hour or so, going back to, say, well, let's not even go that far back. As it approached Denham Springs, you started to see that rotation showing up. Once in the Denham Springs area, that couplet really started to stand out. And over the last several frames here, severe images that are coming into the radar. That couplet, while it may be a kind of a broad area, is still showing up, so that danger is still there. Moving at 60 miles an hour again, so this is quickly moving through. We are at least seeing some improving conditions just to the west of the line, and in fact, folks at the National Weather Service office are saying they're already in the process of removing the warning for the Felicianas, East and West Baton Rouge, Point Coupé, and Iberville from the watch. So as soon as the line passes, the risk of anything severe is gone, and it really has only been right along the line. I'm going to switch back over to the what we call reflectivity, the precipitation, the rain that you're more accustomed to seeing. They will continue the just continuation of the tornado watch for the parishes that are still to the east and along the line. Everyone to the west of the line, you are now being removed from that watch. So again, just to update you, the reason that we cut into programming is that there is a tornado watch, which does, a tornado warning, which does include Tangi, mainly for the Independence to Amite area. Storm won't be there, the tornado, until about 9:30, so you still have some time. And you notice how long these watch boxes are. It's because these storms are moving so quickly that it has to encompass kind of a large area, because of that the speed of these tornadoes is about 60 miles an hour. So they are just booking it along a very fast moving line. Now, thus far, most of the tornadic storms that have been showing up on radar have been more on the northern end of this line. Now, we'll see if that continues to where maybe we're not seeing quite as much activity on the southern end of it, say the line that will affect eventually the rest of the Florida, or rest of the river parishes, metro area, and down toward the bayou and the coast. It has not been quite as active, at least in terms of showing any rotation, but again, that easily could change. We have a new severe thunderstorm warning that is in effect for Pike and Walthall, so that is just north of the state line. We do have a camera that is in Livingston Parish. Obviously, we're not going to see too much at night, but just to show you the intense rainfall, you're going to get some quick reduced visibilities, and it is going to be, one of those late night events that if you're trying to go to sleep early, it may keep you up because it's got a lot of lightning with it. Actually, the lightning counter has not been excessive. We've seen lines of storms with far more activity with lightning than this one is, but certainly it will have kind of a round of heavy rainfall, and thankfully it is just a very thin line. It is not going to be a long duration rain event. Flash flooding is possible just within that initial heavy downpour, where you might get a 1 to 2 inch rainfall rate within a short period of time, and that can lead to usually the low-lying area, the street flooding, the drainage ditches, and the ponding of water. Not going to be a widespread issue. So the flooding was never really too much of a concern with this event, as it always looked like it was going to be more of just a thin line of heavy rain and severe storms, and that potential was always there for severe storms to move through the area. So just updating, the storm that we have been monitoring and will continue to monitor until that threat is gone is the tornado warning that is in effect for, or which will be in effect for northern Tangi and Amite, central Tangi, Amite, and Independence, probably within the next, say, 15 minutes or so. You still see that couplet showing up. This is what we're looking at. We look for this little signature right here, what we call a couplet. When the reds and the greens, the winds that are moving away from the radar and toward the radar. Radar site is out in Slidell, and when we're looking for these little couplets, that's just showing where the winds are spinning in a very tight area. That would indicate a possible tornado. Doesn't mean one has been confirmed, but certainly a possible tornado. And after several scans of the radar, that couplet continues to show up. It's certainly something that we will need to monitor really until this storm either continues to move out, eventually out of the area, or if it does start to show signs of weakening. So far, the radar scans have not shown that. Going back to the last hour or so, kind of moving this back and forth, you see that couplet kind of showing up when the warning, actually just before the warning was issued, as that storm moved away from Baton Rouge toward Denham and then continues along that trajectory. Has really been following along this trajectory that has been well forecasted by the folks at the National Weather Service office to, again, maybe Independence, but at the moment looking more likely Amite. Again, with these tornadic storms, sometimes they can take a little bit of a jog one way or another. Last several scans kind of keeps it right in the center of this polygon warned area, which would then keep that trajectory more toward Amite. And let's scan it out. Again, moving at about 60 miles an hour right now. So pointing out exactly where that center is and just kind of taking it in the direction of Amite. We're looking at it, say, Amite. Again, timing really has not changed. At around 9:36 would be at Amite. Hood Memorial Hospital, 9:36, about the same time. Roseland, continuing on at about 9:37. Then you're having it at Fluker, 9:40, and continuing along through the course of the 9 o'clock hour. And then hopefully before that point, starting to weaken. But as of right now, it looks like it has been holding together and is continuing along that trajectory. So for the folks in the Independence and Amite area, you still have a little bit of time, maybe a little less than 15 minutes now to prepare and get into that tornado safe room as this storm is moving in your direction. Now, as I also said, thankfully, again, if there is any silver lining with this, most, if not all, of the storms that have become strong to severe, we'll focus more on the severe storms, have been right along the line. So we have not, thankfully, seen anything that has developed out ahead of the line, because sometimes these individual cells, when they begin to interact with the line or even just out on their own, can start to rotate and produce tornadic signatures where tornado warnings would be issued, maybe tornadoes on the ground. Thus far, we have not really seen that. So all of the threat is right along that line, so we can kind of time out exactly when that threat will be in your area and if that potential for tornadic storms is nearing you. So kind of timing it out. Again, that leading edge of this line is already in Amite. So Amite, you're already getting it on the heavy rainfall. The tornadic signature, though, that is showing up is still just down to your southwest, but is moving in your direction. Let's say it'll be there in about 10 plus minutes or so. So you still have a little bit of time. And for the folks in Baton Rouge, the rest of the Florida parishes, severe threat is over once this line is through. So Amite, after about 9:30, 9:45, the severe threat for you is done. You'll be out of the severe weather threat for much of, at least say, western Tangi before the 10 o'clock hour. It'll continue for the North Shore parishes, not quite yet across the river parishes by 10 o'clock, but then it will also be impacting the metro area as we get probably after the 10 to 10:30 time frame. So far, we have not really seen anything in terms of rotation within the southern end of this line. It's been a little bit more focused on the northern end, but again, that could change just going back into the last several hours as to where we've seen most of the tornadic threats coming from. It's been generally more on the northern end of this line as opposed to the southern end. If that continues, it's yet to be seen. But notice the southern end of the line is far thinner, and there are even a couple of little breaks within this line of rain that is approaching now from the south. Still getting fueled from those brief, warm, humid air mass that moved in out ahead of our front. Remember, most of the day today we were spent in the 50s, and just recently high temperatures were able to get into the mid-60s. Looked like briefly we hit 70 degrees today for a high at Kenner. So that was that warmer, more humid air that was surging in ahead of this line. And again, with respect to the line itself, had we had a longer period of a strong southerly wind, which would have continued to increase temperatures and the humidity, increasing those ingredients for the severe weather, this would have been more of an outbreak, and we probably would have seen more warnings issued. It was actually kind of a blessing that it was a short-lived surge of warm, humid air that did not really continue for very long. It was only a few hours that we really saw that surge of the Gulf moisture moving in to help the severe storms become severe, or the storms to become severe. And thankfully, that was not the case. Most of the day today, we had that more stable air mass of the colder and relatively drier air. It wasn't but for the last several hours did we finally start to see a little bit of a surge in Gulf moisture that's helping to fuel what may be some tornadic storms moving in along this line. Again, thankfully, we have not had any reports. I'm kind of going back from, we're in a chat group with the folks in the National Weather Service office. And if you see me kind of walk off camera here, I'm just looking at our chat group. There has been really no reports thus far, at least into the National Weather Service office, of any damage with this line. They're also saying that we were mentioning in earlier broadcasts, if you were with us, that the only watch that was in effect was one for southeast Louisiana that is until 1 a.m. All of this has already been canceled, so that's been removed from the watch. At the moment, it did not include southern Mississippi. Storm Prediction Center is right now coordinating with the National Weather Service office in Slidell, and we will see a new watch issued just because they've had some rotation within the storm line. Doesn't look like it's going to be weakening that soon, and by the time it gets to Mississippi, we'll still have the potential for additional possible tornadoes, so we will see a new watch issued. That should be coming out shortly from the from the Storm Prediction Center. Those are the folks that actually issue the watches. So we're still monitoring that storm. I'm going to go back to that cell that's approaching Amite in just a moment, but again, give you an idea, a rough idea of the timing of the line. And the model, our high resolution model, has actually done a fairly decent job with projecting that line out over the next few hours. So by 10 o'clock, again, as I said, western Tangi will just about out of the risk. Again, anything that's going to be severe is going to be right along and maybe just ahead of the line. So after 10, that threat for western Tangi is gone, and anything kind of upriver from Assumption is already gone as well. But the threat continues for the rest of the river parishes, then the metro area, North Shore, Mississippi, and down the coast. So timing this out after the 10 o'clock hour, looks like between 10:30 and 11 or so, it'll be more of the North Shore. By this point at 11 o'clock, western Washington, western St. Tammany, already out of the woods, maybe looking at the metro area getting in on the brunt of it. River parishes can consider the line already done for you, and then down toward the coast. And then again, continuing after 11 o'clock toward midnight, we will likely see most, if not all, of southeast Louisiana, for the most part, out of the threat, with the exception of maybe central and southern Plaquemines Parish after that kind of 11:30 probably to midnight around the Mississippi counties, and then the threat is gone. This is a very fast-moving line, so again, if there's any upside to it, it's not a long-duration event. And after about midnight, 1 o'clock, and really as the line passes you, you can go to bed and rest easy that the threat is over. Weather Service is continuing the tornado warning for Amite. It is getting closer, so let's take a look at the velocities and show you where that rotation is. I'm going to take you back in time within the last couple of minutes or so I kind of get an idea. Sometimes when you look at these images just still, it's hard to see exactly where I'm talking about. So the rotation is right here. Let me move my graphic up just a little bit. The rotation was here as it was exiting Denham Springs. That was at 9:11. Continuing this out over the last several minutes, you still see that couplet, that signature showing up. It looks like maybe it's starting to weaken a little bit. You're not seeing the brightness of the red quite as much, but it looks like it is still showing up. So even if it is not necessarily a tornado, it is still a rotating thunderstorm, and you still have very powerful, strong winds, damaging winds. Regardless, sometimes we talk about damage from a storm. It doesn't really matter if it was straight line winds or a tornado. Damage is damage, and this is definitely associated with some very strong winds. So it is nearing, probably within the next 10 minutes or so, for the folks in Amite. It looks like this will stay north, but let's just say from Amite down toward Independence, along 55, just get into that tornado safe space. You may need to be there for about 10 minutes or so. These storms are moving very, very quickly, 60 miles an hour, in fact, and so you won't have to stay there for very long, and hopefully this passes over, and that's it, because again, this is the leading edge of that line. Once this is past you, the threat for the rest of the night is done. You are out of the woods in terms of any additional severe threats. This will continue then through the rest of Tangipahoa into Washington as well as into St. Tammany. But as far as the rotation goes, this is the only one that's showing up. It looks like there may have been one that was earlier that's right around where it's labeled Livingston, but it appears as though that is no longer a threat. And it doesn't look like the couplet is really showing up nearly as well defined as it had. So what I'm hoping is that this trend continues, and by the time this storm passes over Amite, we won't see an additional tornado warning issued for this storm, as it does look like, and just kind of what I've been looking at over the last couple of minutes here since we went on the air, it does look like that this little couplet is beginning to weaken. So that hopefully is good news for those folks in Amite, but err on the side of caution. Get into that tornado safe space. Just hang there for a couple of minutes. You won't have to be there for very long. Again, these storms are moving very, very quickly. About 10, 15 minutes or so, you'll be able to get the all clear and get out of the closet, bathroom, hallway, wherever you need to get to in that centrally located space in your home. And then again, the threat is over. Not showing up nearly as well defined, but as I said, always better to just err on that side of caution with regards to these storms as it continues. So let's see. Okay, new information with regards to the tornado watch box. A new watch will be issued for the 3 coastal Mississippi counties, as well as Pearl River County through the 5 a.m. time frame. It's not going to go that late into the night, early morning hours. It's just that's how the watches are issued for these blocks of time. It'll be expired as soon as the threat is gone. And believe me, by about 1, 2 a.m., our Mississippi counties will be out of that threat. But we will see a new tornado watch issued for these areas, again, where conditions are ripe for a tornado. Warnings mean one has been either observed or indicated by radar. What we've been looking at here, approaching Amite, is a radar indicated. You would actually see the color change to a kind of that purplish color if it is a confirmed tornado, and then it deepens color if it is an emergency where damage has been ongoing and continues. Did see a few of those out in western Louisiana, southwestern Louisiana. Not heard any reports thus far. Really, the only reports I've heard so far were the ones that were out near the Houston area earlier. As far as once this line moved into Louisiana, while we have seen several warnings issued, thus far, not too many storm reports. Now, again, that could change once Weather Service office folks are able to go out and start assessing damage to our west. That may change. We may see some confirmed tornadoes, but as of right now, that has not been the case. You still see that little couplet showing up right over Montpelier at the moment, so it is inching closer, moving, and now it looks like about 50 miles an hour. So it appears as though it has slowed down a little bit, but not much as that storm continues along a trajectory toward the northeast. So for the folks in Amite, Independence as well, it looks like it is going to stay to your north, but you know, just err on the side of caution and get into that tornado safe space as the storm is getting closer to you at the moment. As far as any additional rotation within the initial line, that's where we would see any kind of real tornadic threat. Does look like some strong winds, not necessarily rotation, but kind of broad from Thibodaux down south. Definitely strong winds with the initial line, but doesn't appear to have any kind of rotation at the moment. And then along the northern end of the line, really the only spot so far, and hopefully the only spot that will continue to show up, is the one moving toward Amite at about 50 miles an hour. So looking at the center of that storm now, we'll time this out again. Taking a look at the trajectory toward the northeast. So in the next, say, 20 miles or so, here is the breakdown of when it will be over Amite, 9:38. Again, it slowed down a little bit, so the earlier estimated time was 9:36. It's now at 9:38, so 2 minutes later. Then Hood Memorial Hospital, 9:38. Roseland, a minute later. Interstate Christian School at 9:40. Fluker at 9:43. And then continuing on toward the northwest. If it were to continue, I am kind of projecting this beyond where the warned area is, but I'm kind of projecting to say if it were to happen to continue. Either way, even if this is no longer a tornado and we don't see a new tornado warning issued for it, these are still areas that will get in on that very strong wind with that thunderstorm as it moves up toward the northeast. So looking at the velocities, and again, we'll kind of go back in time over the last several minutes because it gives you a really clear picture as to what the storm looked like a few minutes ago and then as what it looks like now. That more well-defined just to the north of Livingston, couplet showing up as we kind of project that out over the last several minutes. Really does look like it is, for the most part, not completely fallen apart, but it is certainly a weakening storm or possibly a weakening tornado as it inches a little bit closer to Amite. But again, err on the side of caution. What we analyze here on the computers, you need to consider the folks that are on the ground, and it's best to be safe. So get into that tornado safe space, even if this is, hopefully it is a weakening tornado, weakening storm, and there really is no threat for Amite. Let's hope that that is the case, but just let's be cautious for the next few minutes as this storm is almost on top of you for Amite. Let's get through this one. Hopefully we don't have any additional warnings to worry about for the rest of the night. So Amite, this is on your doorstep. We'll be there within the next couple of minutes. Let's take a look at the entire line itself. As I said, as the initial line itself moves out, you're done. The severe risk is gone, and we may still have some lingering showers and maybe even a few thunderstorms even behind the line through the overnight and even into early tomorrow morning. It'll be anything ahead of and along this boundary where we'd have the severe risk. Once it is gone, and you are in the clear. Much of Assumption looks like things are already improving, but moving towards St. James, continuing through St. James right now, and then eventually St. John. and then St. Charles Parish. So, okay, you just heard that noise maybe in the background. That's just the Storm Prediction Center issuing the new tornado watch, and we'll jump to that graphic. This will include now southern Mississippi, our coastal Mississippi counties, and the reason it goes until 5 a.m. is because it also includes much of the Florida Panhandle out toward Fort Walton Beach. So it does include a huge area. Again, as far as our Mississippi communities go, the threat will be gone by about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. So this will continue to be a threat for lower Alabama, Florida after that fact. But for Mississippi, it'll be in and out of here by about 12:30, 1 o'clock or so. So that is the new watch that was just issued to include our Mississippi counties beyond the 1 a.m. time frame, although it looks like even by about 1 a.m. This line should already be over you and quickly moving off to the east. So right now, the only area that we are watching in our viewing area is the storm that is nearing Amite. Let's switch back over to the velocities to see if that little couplet, not nearly as well defined, but it is still showing up, and thinking that the Weather Service will just allow this one to expire. This one goes until 9:45, but it's going to be beyond Amite by 9:45. So unless a new warning were to be issued to continue along, which it's not looking very likely, I'm just kind of keeping up with the chat and the National Weather Service office meteorologist, is that it would likely just kind of expire once it moves beyond Amite, and then the threat is gone for those folks, obviously. But right now, it looks like that storm is just about over Amite proper, so this is when you need to be in that tornado safe space. We've given about a almost half-hour heads up for this storm, as it was a very well forecasted, well projected possible tornado on the ground. And I've been with you here for almost 20 minutes now, so this has been a very well advertised. Thankfully, shouldn't have surprised anyone in Amite as it is moving over you. Again, if there is anything on the ground, it's right in through here, just about to cross the parish line into Amite. So it's right in through there. Not nearly as well defined as it had been, but to err on the side of caution, we're going to stay on the air until this threat is over. And hopefully that is all we see for the rest of the night. As I said, the southern end of this line from the lake down toward the coast has not been nearly as active in terms of showing any rotation. It's been a little bit more active on the northern end. We saw a lot of activity popping up, rotation in the radar of possible tornadoes around the Baton Rouge area. This kind of springboarded from Lafayette to Baton Rouge, and now is continuing up toward the North Shore. And the southern end of the line has been a little bit quieter with regards to rotating type storms. And this does look like it is really weakened or fallen apart. But for the folks in Amite, you got another 6 minutes or so before this threat is already passed. And so let's just keep it here until this threat is over for you. And then, as I said, hopefully that is the only warning that we have to deal with for these folks. But we've already seen several warnings issued. So far, it has been fairly tranquil with regards to any storm reports coming in. Emergency management officials are also on our chat group with the National Weather Service office, and they will report in when they're getting reports of damage into their offices. And so far, we have not had any of these storms farther west, and hopefully that is a trend which continues as the line pushes through now the North Shore, the coastal areas, the metro area, probably after about 10:30 or so, and then continuing toward Mississippi. So, you know, looking at the velocities here, maybe right in through this little region right here. So Amite to Roseland. So it is just about probably on the parish line right now. So it is closing in on 55, and then eventually Highway 51. Looks like this is to the north of LA 16. So kind of getting you familiar with this area. North of LA 16, crossing the parish line, not quite to I-55 just yet, but it looks like, well, and there we go. They just expired the tornado warning. So they expired the tornado warning. They are extending a severe thunderstorm warning for basically that storm, but the entirety of this line. So from about Amite to Hammond, almost to the north shore of Lake Maurepas, and then continues to the east to include just south of Franklinton, almost to Bogalusa. So the southwestern corner of Washington Parish, now western St. Tammany, in advance of a line. What they're saying is there is the potential for some hail. There is a possibility of a tornado within this line. So far, nothing at the moment, but the primary threat from this line as it moves now through southern and central Tangi, and then continues into St. Tammany, is primarily going to be the strong winds. The entire line is moving at about 45 miles an hour. So you think of that forward speed of this line of storms. Doesn't take much to get these through some of these communities, and you deal with it for half hour, maybe 45 minutes at the very most, and then it is already gone. So this is not going to be a long duration event, which also is great news for a flooding risk. These may be heavy rains, but they're not going to sit for very long. They're not going to sit at all. They are going to move through very, very quickly. So just to update this new severe thunderstorm warning, again, the primary threat is the 60-mile-per-hour winds, the possibility of some penny-sized hail as that line of storms continues toward and through our North Shore parishes. So that is what we've been watching so far on radar over the last several almost half hour now. Has been what is within this line an occasional embedded rotating storm and the potential for a tornado. When a warning is issued, we cut into programming. But right now it looks like it may not be as much in that rotation threat as it is just the strong winds. While again, winds or a weak tornado, damage is damage, and strong straight line winds of 60 miles an hour can also do some damage. But that may be what the focus is going to be on for the next, say, half hour or so as this line continues, and then eventually beyond St. Tammany and Washington, and then into Mississippi as we continue through the late night hours. So our tornado warning has expired, actually kind of expired really before the storm, the cell actually reached Amite, which is great news there, as it did look like it was weakening. We'll continue to monitor this line through the rest of the night. We're going to go back to regular programming for another few minutes and then be right back here for Eyewitness News at 10. For now, I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin.
From WWL-TV's Eyewitness News, this has been your local weather expert alert, sponsored by Egan Insurance Agency.